YouTube? Welcome to my first recap video of the season. So I'm going to recap everything that happened last Saturday, or ironically yesterday, in the world of college football. Of course, college football kicked off its official beginnings yesterday, headlined by College Game Day and Lee Corso put on the final headgear, having that full circle moment, putting Bruce's head on one more time since that was his first one he did back in 1996. But let's go ahead and recap the featured matches that I discussed in last week's video that all happened yesterday. So let's go and get started. So with the first matchup that we examined, that will be a top three showdown in Columbus. Game Day was there, Fox's pregame show was there, Lee Corso's full circle moment was there. We have been waiting since the end of the Cotton Bowl in the college football playoff semifinal last season for this matchup. It pitted Texas and Ohio State. You had everything everything was just at stake here. Bragging rights, conference notoriety, who's going to be in the national title hunt, who's going to look good, who look bad. Everything was on the line. Plus, 105,000 crazy Bucknuts and Longhorn fans packed the shoe. It was a sight to see. Did it live up to the hype? Not necessarily. So, many people, including myself, I thought it was going to be like an offensive showdown. It was going to be touchdown after touchdown. It was going to be like in like the 28-21 kind of a game. But this turned out to be a defensive showdown, and I remember Gus Johnson on the call yesterday for the Ohio State game. He said, "Remember when Texas was in the Big 12 and it was like a 52-50 game pretty much every time they walked on the field? Well, those days have clearly long since passed them. This was a defensive-minded game. It was 7-0 in the middle of the second quarter, and neither team scored a touchdown in the same quarter until the end. And overall, it was just a defensive battle. Now, this is where I wish this game was played in probably like week 2 or week 3 because these teams, they just didn't look comfortable. Let's start with Texas. We all knew the storyline coming for Texas. It was Arch Manning, the grandson of Archie Manning. So it was a Manning back in college. He had the name recognition. He looked completely out of sorts. ESPN has said he was 37% of his throws were off target, which was 11 for 30. It was a joke. He was offline all the time yesterday. He just didn't look good. The stats, they didn't look good either. That interception he threw, he kind of forced it in there, really stared down the receiver. It didn't look good whatsoever. Their returning running back, Wisner, just didn't find any open holes. That Ohio State D-line looked absolutely terrific. The one touchdown catch, though, by Livingstone was his one of 2 catches he had during the day. But overall, Texas, they just didn't live up to the hype. They looked sloppy, and it didn't look crisp. Definitely not the Texas offense we were anticipating coming into the horseshoe yesterday. Now, on the flip side, with Ohio State, of course, they had their true freshman quarterback starting in his first career start. But this one is a little different because he's at home and he's got the home crowd behind him and stuff like that. This is the shocking statement that this was Ohio State's first win at home versus an AP number 1 team since 1985 when they took out number 1 Iowa back in, it was like 40 some years ago. It was a long time ago. But Julian Saint had, 65% completion percentage, 126 yards. He had the one bomb throw to Carnell Tate for his one passing touchdown, which was a sensational catch in the end zone. Their lead back was C.J. Donaldson, the transfer from West Virginia. He had 67 yards of just rumbling, tumbling yards, and had a touch on the ground. And then Jeremiah Smith, the preseason big-time wide receiver, arguably a Heisman favorite now. He had 6 receptions on 10 targets for 43 yards. He had 2 drops in the second drive of the game, and that's where he ditched the gloves and got some new ones. But Ohio State, they showed not a great offensive showing. Texas didn't either, but it was just the running game just wasn't there. They had 77 yards on 34 carries. That was like just over 2 yards a carry average. Not the best. But they play by far one of the better defenses on their schedule. So, if you can grind out a win like this in the early season, I think this is going to set them up later on when they have to go play those more difficult matchups when they play like the Washingtons and the Michigans and the Wisconsins and those other Big Ten teams that have hard-nosed defenses. Next week, both teams are going to play pretty much nobody. Texas will host San Jose State. That'll be a noon kick on ABC. And then Ohio State will host Grambling State. That'll be a 7:30 kick on the Big Ten Network. Grades for these teams, I think Texas got a D. They just didn't look good. I was going to go with a C because their defense looked good, but I was I thought the offense they didn't look comfortable. They were just off. Ohio State, I gave them a B. I was going to give them a C as well. Arguably, both these teams should have gotten C grades from me, but Ohio State they looked better when it came to passing. Their defense was much better than I expected them to be, and it was just a better game to be honest for Ohio State, and they proved why they are still the reigning national champions, and the run through the college football national champions still runs through Columbus. But Ohio State got the win here. They're going to presumably move to the number one slot when the AP poll comes out on either Tuesday or Wednesday. All right, the second matchup was a matchup that I was very much surprised with. This was Florida State getting a convincing 2-touchdown win at home against the 8th-ranked Tide of Alabama. So, I had a hunch this was going to happen. The writing was on the wall. They thought Alabama had the best defense in the SEC. They had a quarterback that had sat the bench the last 2 years behind Jalen Milroe and Jalen Hurts, and he'd read the system, and he was just good. Well, we saw him in his one start last year against the University of South Florida, and he just looked god-awful. I mean, it was just trash. Well, this is the second time they've thrown him in as now he's the starter, and he just looked like hot garbage. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, hot garbage is what I thought he was. Alabama had a 16-play touchdown drive to start the season, and then a touchdown. So you would have thought that they were just going to kill the clock, do what they need to do to go get the job done. But then something flipped halfway through the game. Florida State just went on this tear. I mean, it was just a stampede in the second half. Alabama just looked out-muscled, got out-coached, out-competed, and just looked like garbage. Granted, this is the same Alabama team that lost to an unranked Oklahoma team and an unranked Vanderbilt team, both on the road. So this is kind of starting to turn into a pattern. And this is a pattern that we're not used to seeing in Tuscaloosa because of the legacy that Nick Saban left there and stuff like that. Albeit, Simpson did have 2 touchdowns passing. Ryan Williams just looked off. He didn't look good whatsoever. 5 catches for 3 yards. But the notable stat there is that they had 74 yards rushing and no touchdowns. That's worse than Ohio State did, and they played a much better opponent, or at least a ranked opponent nonetheless, in Texas. On the flip side of Florida State, what a win to start off your season after a 2-win campaign last season. This was their first ranked win in 2 seasons. Nick Castellanos, he raised some eyebrows, to say the least. He had some comments earlier in the week saying, "Nope, Alabama can't run with me." And he backed it up big time. His 16 rushes of 78 yards was part of the team-wide 230-yard rushes and 4 touchdowns on the ground. I mean, it was a beatdown on the rushing side, and he didn't need to pass that much. I mean, he only had 14 passes in the game, and he just took Alabama and said, "You guys just suck." Let's be honest. It was 17-7 at halftime. I thought something was brewing at the end of the third quarter, and then it was just solidified when Alabama could not convert that 4th and 5 with about 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. But again, similar narrative to Texas and Ohio State. Both these teams play pretty much nobody opponents. Next week, Alabama plays UL Monroe, who was ironically Nick Saban's first loss when he was the head coach of Alabama back in 2007. That'll be Saturday, 7:45 on the SEC Network, and then Florida State will host a pretty much nobody Eastern Texas A&M noon kick on the ACC Network. I'm giving Florida State an A here. They absolutely owned the line of scrimmage, owned Alabama in the trenches, and it was a beatdown. And Alabama, they've got some serious question marks. I'm giving them a D grade here. This is without a doubt. There was no wiggle room about being a C or not. It was a straight up D. They looked like trash. And they've got some severe issues in that quarterback room. And it's going to start with Kellen DeBoer having an honest conversation with his staff, with himself, and figuring out what's going to happen with Ty Simpson. Is he really the guy for the long-term future of this season? All right, and then the third matchup I'm going to discuss, and the final one, was the primetime showdown in Clemson's version of Death Valley, featuring the LSU Tigers and the Clemson Tigers. This was a slugfest. It was very similar to Ohio State. I watched like the first 3 quarters of the game, and then I was like, okay, I think LSU is going to pull away with this one. This was LSU's first season opening win under Brian Kelly, against a Power Five opponent, and it was their first opening season win, since 2019 when Joe Burrow was the quarterback. Garrett Nussmeier, I still don't think he's a qualified quarterback. I think he got the job done. Do I think he's going to win a national title? Probably not. They did have 2 turnovers. Both of them were fumbles. One of them was committed by Nussmeier. But the lucky part was that they only led to 3 Clemson points and not more, which is shocking to say for a Clemson team that had high expectations coming in. I think LSU, it was a good win, but their true narrative will spell out for themselves throughout the season. They've got the hardest strength of schedule in the SEC. They got to play Florida at home in 2 weeks. It's going to be something, but we'll see LSU then. Now Clemson. Oh, Clemson. You want to talk about having massive expectations and just having them all stalled away at home under a bad quarterback. I hate to say it, K. Klubnik is a bad quarterback. 50% completion percentage, no touchdowns, an interception. The run game was just not there. 1.6 yards a carry for the team. A joke. Scoreless at home in the second half. I mean, the fact that Dabo Swinney came out and said, "Oh, we're going to be 16-0." Well, you just spelled out how bad you were and how much of a lies those are going to be. I mean, Clemson, they don't play anybody after this, and that's their problem. I mean, they do play Florida State, who could be a ranked opponent. They got SMU, but they're at home. That's nothing. I mean, their real test will come the last week of the season when they have to go to South Carolina. That's if South Carolina is any good, which I think they will be, but we'll get to them much later on in the season. But they don't play anybody, and that put a severe damper on their expectations, their goals for the season. ACC crown again very much in play. I mean, it was only the first week of the season. I might be overreacting here, but I think they're just straight up trash. They can't beat the good teams, and Clemson's still stuck back in the 2017-2018 era where it's like, hey, we can beat anybody we want to, including you can't. But LSU, I give them a B for this week. I thought it was a solid. They got the job done. It wasn't spectacular. It just got the job done. Clemson scoreless in the second half. If they would have scored like 10 points, they could have won this game and could have had a higher grade for me this week. Now, again, the same narrative. LSU, they're going to host Louisiana Tech. That would be exclusively on ESPN Plus. If you got that and you're a big Tiger fan, go ahead and watch them. And then Clemson, on the other hand, I should have edited that slide before presenting this. They're going to be hosting Troy. That will be 3:30 on the ACC Network, also next Saturday. All right, so this afternoon, we've got South Carolina and Virginia Tech in Atlanta. We've got Notre Dame going to the Miami of Florida Hurricanes. That'll be fun. And then we've got Bill Belichick's college debuts on Monday. But next week, we're going to have some big-time matchups, including a Big Ten SEC showdown featuring Michigan and Oklahoma will be their second all-time meeting. That's going to be a fun one. But we're going to break down that game along with a bunch of other games all next week, and then we'll also unveil the NFL show starting next Wednesday. Until then, this is your man Dylan signing off for the Week 1 recap. I look forward to seeing you all next week.